Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we're talking about un flic.
Un flic.
Which is French. In English, a cop. And it's
Yes.
Jean-Pierre Melville's final film, I think.
That's right.
Before he died from an untimely heart attack at 55, I think.
All right, so younger than I am now.
Wow, look after yourself. Well, you know, it's 1972 and it's a crime film. He did an awful lot of crime films. It stars Alain Delon as a policeman.
And Catherine Deneuve, who is... She's got some close-ups in this film with like these coral earrings, like in the nightclub, which I think have to be amongst the most beautiful I've ever seen. I mean, it rivals like Garbo or anyone like that. I mean, she's just astonishingly beautiful.
Yeah. And Richard Crenna as Simon, who is his criminal adversary, who he's kind of trying to get a hold on throughout the film. And in some ways, it's a kind of, I would say, workaday film. That sounds uncharitable, but I mean, it's about the kind of mechanisms of crime on the one hand. You know, you see these two particular high sequences which are all about waiting for the kind of time to strike and building up to it and that kind of thing. And on the other hand, the police work is, he's kind of on the trail of this guy, but he's not chasing him down alleys. A lot of the time when you see the cop, he's dealing with other crimes. Mm. And he's also in the arms of Catherine Deneuve, who is a woman that he and the criminal kind of share, although they don't particularly know that.
Yes. I think it's great, actually. And I've kind of misremembered it a little bit. Yeah, so this is not the first time I've seen it. I think it's maybe the third. And, you know, I somehow remembered it as homophobic, right? Mm. And then actually kind of seeing it again, I think actually it's not. It's quite tender. It's quite tender about it, really. Yeah, I mean, particularly considering the time. Mm. I love this film. I think it's great. It's not one of Melville's greatest, like Le Samouraï, but seeing it again, I mean, when you're talking about workaday, I think it's kind of, I think it's minimalist.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it.
It brings up, you know, other things into it, but I think it's amazingly like beautiful, you know, and it captures like this mood, this melancholy, like, you know, the whole film is done with a blue filter, and kind of blue in the film is the color of the night, the color of jazz, you know, the color of people kind of not quite connecting, of this underworld in which people have desires and feelings, but, you know, kind of there's almost like no connection, really. And on the one hand, the film is also quite accepting of, you know, these people who are forced to kind of live on the margins, right? Yeah, I kind of...
yeah, well, it did occur to me that there was a sub, kind of, not a plot, but a sub aspect to the film that has to do with gay people and transgender people. There are two particular characters who show up. There's an informant that the cop uses who is transgender, or at least kind of cross-dresser.
No, she's a transvestite, according to... Yeah, because, you know, when he thinks she's given him the wrong information, she said, "No more dressing up as a woman for you." Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And he said, and then he says to the cops, "Take this thing away." You know, so he kind of lashes, and he hits her as well. I mean, he lashes out literally, kind of literally and verbally. He lashes out at her.
And the film is very interesting because you can see that the transsexual or transgender person is clearly in love with the Alain Delon character. Yeah. Mm. You can see it in those glances. Mm. And actually there's even a suggestion that there might have been something between them. Yeah. Mm. I mean, the film doesn't say it, you know, but there is something about the glances between them, you know, kind of at the very beginning, and a kind of, I don't know, a tenderness between them, yeah, kind of, yeah, when she comes to inform in the car, that kind of suggests something. It doesn't say it, but it suggests it.
Do you think the film is setting him up as someone whose masculinity is being questioned by this?
No, I think the film is just it's set in an underworld where things are more fluid because people are forced to live underground. I mean, so on the one hand, the film begins with the robbery, right? But almost the first time you see Delon is, this older gay man who's with a hustler, and the guy's hustling him because he's just about to turn 18, and it's actually a criminal offense to have sex with a minor. So, the minor is trying to hustle the old man out of a really valuable art object, a sculpture, right? And the old man calls the police, which would have been, an unusual thing to do because, in fact, he is committing a crime.
Yeah, it's like he's got this kid back to his room, and they are together.
That's right. And what you see is Delon charging the blackmailer and letting the old gay man off the hook. Yeah. And there's this very interesting thing where they say, oh, it's not your offense. Your offense, you won't be charged for a first offense or something. You'll only be charged if it's a repeat offense. And he says something like, well, there are always repeat offenses, i.e. he's gay. So, he'll be with another man, right? So, and actually I think that sets the tone for the film. And it's a very interesting parallelism with the very ending of the film. Because, what you've seen, and so Alain Delon is having a relationship with Catherine Deneuve, who ends up being the villain's mistress, right? And she's a murderess. Yeah? I mean, we see her commit a murder, right? And at the end, he lets her off the hook.
Yeah.
Because he's got feelings for her. Yeah? Even though he knew that she was the mistress of the other guy and they were just fooling around every so often together, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of, in a way, a noir romance of that type, yeah? Where kind of, love is always complicated, it's always partial, it's always underground. It might be a sexual compulsion, but, there's no, full commitment or connection. Yeah, it's always like on the side, or I mean, I think the film is so interesting in that way. Yeah.
Well, there's a real streak of bleakness to the film, and it comes through in that blue filter, as you say. And I think the opening scene as well, that robbery, it's in the middle of nowhere. They're at the seaside somewhere, and it's foggy and bleak and quiet. And these the team of 4 thieves kind of get their masks on and they queue up, and it's, as I said, it's all about waiting. It's not a kind of exciting, it's not a kind of thrilling thing. They're just waiting for their moment, and everything, it's like a clockwork thing of just waiting for the things to fall into place for the moment to happen. And then, of course, something goes wrong, and the guy manages to call the police. So, your classic sort of noir, things go wrong and things kind of spiral from there. And someone dies as well. They shoot the clerk behind the counter. And then after that, you cut to Alain Delon, the police officer, and he's in the back of a car, and I think his first line of dialogue, actually I took a screenshot of it, I put it on Twitter. "My day's work began just before nightfall," he says in voiceover. Which is, I mean, I work nights, and imagine if I said something like that, I'd sound so cool and dispossessed.
French existentialist.
Yeah, exactly. There is that thing, like, there's something very, very French about it, just being dispossessed, and he's got a real misanthropic streak to him. The film opens with a let me just get it up. The film opens with a sort of epigraph on screen from Eugene Francois Vidocq. "The only feelings mankind has ever inspired in policemen are those of indifference and derision." And I think he says this at one point in the film as well, the cop.
Yes,
so he's someone who's kind of tired of people and tired of life.
Well, who's seen the worst of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, who only sees the drug dealers and the pimps and the whores and the criminals.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is both a negative, but it's also a plus.
So there's something that I found kind of difficult about him, I suppose, in empathising with him, because I suppose it seemed to me there was nothing this character wanted. Okay, he wants the woman, but in a really muted kind of way. He doesn't really pursue her, he just kind of spends time with her. And he prosecutes the criminals and he tries to chase them down, but again, there's something lackadaisical about it. He's not kind of knocking things down to go and get them. I kind of had trouble with that. There's a feeling to his job which is going through the motions.
But you see, that's what I like most about the film. That it's so, part of the way that it's framed and the way that it's shot is almost like kind of alienated. Yeah. It's kind of, somebody who's not connected to the world he lives in. You get the feeling that, like, his job is, we only ever see him do his job, except for that, sexual compulsion, the sex game that he plays with the Catherine Deneuve character, where, it is actually a sex game, right? He comes to arrest her, and, she takes his gun and so on. So there's a kind of a desire, but actually there's nothing else in his life that we see except crime solving, which he's clearly very good at. Yeah. But the film, I think, is also a wonderful heist film. The whole thing in the train with the helicopter overhead, which again is very minimalist. It's not Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible.
No.
Well, actually, you can see that that's where they stole the idea.
Yeah, it's totally an influence, isn't it? The helicopter chasing the train and then trying to steal something on the train.
That's right. It hadn't occurred to me until now, but, it clearly is.
Yeah.
Although
the effects are a little bit better in Mission Impossible. I mean, I know, it might be being uncharitable, but the external shots of the train and the plane are so transparently kind of tabletop models. It's quite distracting, I found.
Well, but yet, you see, to me that depends on what are the intended effects.
Okay.
You see, so, if the intended effect is to get your blood pulsing, then obviously Mission Impossible, the Brian De Palma's better, But I think flic is intending something different. I think in this film, you are also meant to find it exciting and interesting and so on. But there's a lot more attention to the how the thing is done, right? So, the key, the magnet to open the door, the entire removal of the suit, the putting on the other suit, the washing of the hair, and so on. Like, you see every step of the process, right? And in a very enclosed space, you often have space around these characters, yeah? So this feeling of someone alone and alienated, yeah, remains throughout the film, I think. Even in those bits, which are meant to be exciting, there's a helicopter overhead and a crime is going to be committed and so on.
I would say in Mission Impossible, it's certainly the case still that every action is shown to you and important, and every bit of information you have makes a difference. I think it's a really well built heist scene in that too. What's going on in train in Mission Impossible?
Well, it's a great film, Mission Impossible.
But it's
a very different kind of film.
Yeah, I think the difference is not exactly in how it's shown, but what the action actually is. In Mission Impossible, there's this thing about masks, and there's various teams of people on the train, and also the helicopter behind is a much more exciting thing, and they go into the tunnel, and that's just mad. In this, you spend so much time. Rather like I said, I think with the bank robbery at the start, they spend all this time waiting to perform the action. In this, on the train, it's all about getting into character, putting the robe on, making it look like he's one of the passengers. Because actually, the heist, which is he's stealing a suitcase full of heroin, or a couple of suitcases full of heroin, takes hardly any time at all. He chloroforms a guy, steals the stuff, manages to hook it up to the plane, get winched up, and he's gone. So, and there are elements of that which are supposed to be exciting. I think when he's getting winched up and stuff, like it's supposed to be getting the heart pumping, but the kind of central part of the heist, taking the stuff, happens in about 5 seconds flat. It's all about the building up to it and the mechanisms of kind of getting the situation right for that burst of action. That I think would be that's what I would draw on as the central difference between that and Mission Impossible's train scene, where in the train scene in Mission Impossible, it's all happening all the time.
Yes. I mean, I think this is a film about alienation. It's the opening title that you said, is what the film is about. Yeah, it's about a person whose only contact with people is that which elicits indifference or contempt. Right.
Do you think that the cop changes between the beginning and the end of the film?
Yes, a little bit, in the sense that Well, you can see the sadness, yeah. So the last shot is Alain Delon and his partner, and the camera just stays there and stays there and stays there, on their faces, right? So I think, I imagine you can read whatever you want into it, but what I read, was the sadness, yeah. So he might know, or he might feel at the beginning of the film just indifference and contempt for people, but at least he had a sexual partner. So now he's indifferent and contemptuous and alone. Yeah, with only his job. So
I suppose what I'm asking is do you think that if the film starts off with this, like I say, this epigraph that speaks of alienation and seeing the worst in people, and you get this sense of him being kind of tired of people or misanthropic, is that something then that he finds something that to like in people?
I don't think he's misanthropic.
Okay.
I think, because you don't get the feeling that he hates the world. In fact, in some ways, he seems quite at ease in it, but just alienated, right? So, so for example, the first scenes where he goes into the nightclub, and kind of you almost got the feeling that that they all know about each other, right? So he's in this nightclub, the nightclub owner has a mistress, he's having an affair with the mistress, presumably, kind of everybody knows about everybody else. Actually, I think Catherine Deneuve says that, and he's happy to talk to that person and so on. So I don't think he's misanthropic. I just think he's seen the worst that society has to offer, and at the end of the film, even his low expectations are confirmed, and you end up with a kind of a sadness. It ends up, as a kind of, though the film, I don't want to give the wrong impression because I find it very glamorous, right? I mean, Delon is so beautiful, and Catherine Deneuve is like, beyond beautiful, really. So
it seems like a small part for her. I mean, she was a big star by this point, Deneuve, wasn't she?
Oh yeah, she was a huge star.
It seems like a small part for it. Would it be just the working with Melville because he was so respected?
Yes, I mean, I don't know the background to the film, but she was as big a star as Delon, though Delon had worked with him previously in two films, the Red Circle, which we must watch now because it's also another heist film, and Le Samurai, which is one of my favorite films of all time, actually, where he plays a gangster. So it's the opposite of this. So, but I think it is her only time working with him, but she's given a huge star entrance.
Yeah.
Right, like you see her from the back in a corner, right? Like, and then she turns around. That's cool, Catherine Deneuve.
Yeah.
So, but also, I mean, let's talk about the shots, because he's got this very interesting way of filming where he always uses this wide-angle lens, but it's almost like all broken up into spaces. So it's always through corridors, through glass. Yeah, kind of the whole scenes in the police station. I think they're fantastic, right? So the way that he breaks up those spaces, and he often uses a zoom along with kind of the camera traveling backwards. They have to kind of create rushes and effects, and the zoom to bring your attention to kind of particular things, as well as creating a sense of movement and excitement. I mean, I think it's really quite amazing.
And when he's building up, it's the editing pattern as well. When he's building up to those bursts of action, you get kind of repeated shots of a certain thing. It's just, you get this kind of stasis, and it will be a shot, and then you return to the same character standing in the same place, or the same object in the same place, and it's just waiting and waiting and waiting. And the fact that you go away from the thing and come back to it emphasizes that. Yeah, and then something finally moves, and.
It's also very interesting. So, a couple of things that I noticed in this viewing. Structurally, there are three blondes, right? One is the femme fatale. One is the bourgeois housewife who doesn't know but might suspect, that her bank manager husband is now a crook. and the other one is, we don't know whether it's a transvestite or transsexual. Yeah, but someone. Yeah.
Someone living between established genders, shall we say?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's very interesting, and the film is 1972. Right, so one is bourgeois respectability, the other one is this underworld figure, and Gabi, the transvestite or transsexual, is someone who's really not allowed to be at all. Yeah.
Or someone who is, I'd say, someone who is allowed to be just by the whim of the people in power. He allows her to be who she is and express who she is until she upsets him, and then she's a thing. Take this thing away.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that also struck me is that there are two suicides. Yeah. There's a...
It's one of the accomplices, when he sees the police bearing down on him at the end, shoots himself.
He shoots himself. And then the final one is, I think Delon says, it's suicide by cop. I.e., after he's told not to move, he goes to reach for,
Well, he just reaches into his coat.
Yeah, like wanting to die because actually he's had nothing there, right? So I thought that was kind of very interesting as well.
Well, I suppose I kind of had trouble with the criminal leader, Simon, who commits suicide by cop, in the same way that I had a problem with the cop, which is, again, I kind of didn't know what he wants, and again, there doesn't seem to be any joy taken in his job. You'd think that the thrill of stealing heroin on a train, having a bank robbery, winching up on a helicopter, you think that would be thrilling, that would be a rush.
Yes.
And I don't think you get any feeling of that from him at all. I mean, sure, so in the moment, you maybe wouldn't expect that. He's doing a job and he has to do it right, so you wouldn't expect him to be going, woo! But outside of that, you don't feel like he lives for this,
Yes. Well... But clearly they do, because it's the only thing that they've got going in their life.
Yeah, but that's like, well, then it's the question of, do they do it to live or do they live to do it? It doesn't feel like he lives to do it. He does it because he can and he's good at it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think, well, for me, we're looking in the wrong direction, because what I really love is the film's sadness.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, I can't think of anybody other than Melville who makes cop films with the idea of just conveying this kind of exquisite melancholy, and that's what these films do. They don't pump you up. It's not really about resolving the crime. It's almost about evoking a kind of sadness at the way the world is.
Well, no, that's certainly true in these two characters. I mean, I guess I'm expressing it as though it's a problem. It's only a problem insofar as I had trouble getting into their, sort of sensibility. But I think it's designed to express this melancholy, this sadness. It's not like a mistake that they are the way they are. And I think it's kind of interesting. Like I do think it's interesting that these two characters are both so kind of dispossessed. One much more clearly than the other. But like I say, the criminal doesn't seem to find joy or meaning or anything like that in what he does. He does it because it's what he does. There's something mechanical about that, just as there's something mechanical about the way that the cop goes about his work. And then the other kind of main character, Catherine Deneuve character, winds up unhappy as well at the end. And she's probably had the most... You've probably seen the most joy out of her during the film.
Yeah.
And then she loses the man she's with. It seems pretty clear that she and Alain Delon are not going anywhere.
No, but you see, it's also a very radical ending, because the only murder that we see in the film is the one committed by her.
Yes.
And yet...
Oh, no, you see the guy shoot... Doesn't Simon shoot the clerk at the start, like I said? I think that's a murder you see committed.
Oh, I'm not sure now.
I think so. Because it's in part of the house gone wrong. But it's true that the murder she commits is a central one.
Yes. And she's let off scot-free.
Yes.
So the film has this thing about also... I mean, she's a grifter. She's a very cool grifter. She's working in nightclubs. Yeah, she's with the rich owner of the nightclub. She's involved in the crimes, right? Again, kind of quite impassive, you know, but we see her murder someone in cold blood, right? And then she gets off, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
That's just the way the world is, you know. If people, evil people, kind of get off scot-free, which is really unusual, right? I mean, it's really quite something, and it's done out of feeling. So you know, we think we don't see Alain Delon feel anything, but the only reason he lets her off is because of whatever feelings he might have for her.
Yeah. So like, he's not exactly hard-boiled, is he? He lets his feelings speak through his actions.
That's right. So underneath this impassive face, you get the feeling of other things going on through what he does.
Also, when he's playing the piano in the bar, when she has her entrance, I think, and the cigarette's hanging out his mouth, it looks so French. But that piece is so full of feeling, and then he shares a glance with her, and they smile at each other, and you know, there's affection there, and feeling that, and a sense of humour between them as well.
Yes. I mean, that's lovely, actually. That's important. I'd forgotten about that. And also the same thing with the transvestite, you know, because he hits her, he calls her a thing, but then the cop says, "Shall I take her to the cell?" You know, and she goes, "No, take her out." And they just kind of show her the door, so she goes back, right? Like, you know, and again, that's at his discretion. So actually, you know, there is feeling underneath,
Yeah, or I should say, not throw her out, throw it out.
Throw it out. But nonetheless, you know, the implication is that she's going to go into the cell for 6 months. That's what he tells her. And in fact, you know, he then tells the policeman, "No, just show her out." Out of the building, as opposed to, into a cell. So I thought those things are very kind of telling, and cumulatively, they do kind of build up this world of feeling and loneliness and sadness, and you know, kind of, I really love that about Melville. But also, in a certain way, kind of people doing their jobs, right? So the cop is doing his thing, the criminals are doing their thing. Yeah, there's also something about, you know, doing your job or your duty, or I mean, I suppose this will come out more, you know, if we see Army of Shadows, which is superb. You know, it's about occupied Paris, right, and people in the resistance. So I love that.
Good. Yeah.
So for me, this was a very pleasant revision, you know, because I've somehow had in mind, you know, that there were these queer characters in the film and that their treatment was homophobic. And this time I saw it in quite a different light. I saw kind of a sympathy and an understanding that, you know, so it makes the film even better for me now.
I can understand why you would have responded to it as homophobic back when you first saw it, and I think the kind of the slight homophobia or transphobia that the main character expresses at one point is, you know, it's a violent reaction, and I think that's why I said, you know, is this about his masculinity being attacked in some respect, and him having to kind of prove himself? And I'm not entirely sure that it is. I think it is quite a masculine reaction to lash out at who someone is or what someone is when, you know, in response to something. But it's not about him, like, it's not about saying, oh, underneath it all, he is deeply bigoted. It is kind of... and then that moment with the young man and the old man together in the flat, actually, you know, it shows he exercises kind of, to some degree, understanding. Yeah, he does, like, you can imagine in a much more homophobic film, it would be revulsion, that kind of thing, and it's not
particularly of this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I've changed my mind about it. I like it even more.
Yeah. So we should say that this is part of a Melville string of films on Mubi. They've just shown, we've missed them, Bob Le Flambeur and Léon Morin-Priest. Those are no longer on it. This is still on it for another 3 weeks or so, on Flic. There's also Le Cercle Rouge, which I think we should watch. You suggested it.
Yes.
And Army of Shadows, which again you want to watch. And the other one, which I don't think either of us seems too interested in, is Le Doulos. Le Doulos.
Oh, Le Doulos is wonderful. Yeah. Well, I love Le Doulos as well. So I highly recommend this cycle to everyone. Melville is one of the great French directors. He's been an enormous influence. I mean, we talked about, Mission Impossible and that, that scene with the helicopter, but Tarantino has spoken of him, as a great influence on his films as well. And I'm sure there are many, many more.
Yeah, well, just in the description that Mubi has provided in Le Cercle Rouge, Jean-Pierre Melville's star-studded heist film is the peak of the director's ritualistic, nearly fetishistic paean to cops and robbers, influencing everyone from Michael Mann to Johnny Toe. Many, many directors have been influenced by this guy. Yeah. And it's the first film of his that I've seen, I think. So, interesting introduction. I'm looking forward to seeing the rest.
Great. So thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.